This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm here with Owen Morrill, and he's studying technical writing at the Utah State University. He's worked with a variety of clients as a web content specialist from a local motorcycle club to the University of Colorado. So there really are opportunities everywhere, and I'm super excited to have Owen on the show to talk about his opportunities. So Owen and his work bridges the gap that most companies have between their need for good web content and their lack of knowledge and experience with content management systems. So that includes things like WordPress, which, if you guys have been listening to the show, may have heard of at least one time since we've been doing the show. So thanks for joining us, Owen.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And you're joining us from Frederick, Colorado. Is that correct?
Yep, just a little bit outside of Denver.
Very cool. So give us a little more detail about what exactly it is you do for this niche in motorcycle and for University of Colorado and with their CMS, the content management system, things like that. Tell us a little more detail about that.
Yeah, so I got into web content management when I was working on my technical writing degree. And basically there seemed to be this kind of gap between everybody just assumes that their employees can write web content because they can write in general, but then they kind of don't realize all of the other work that goes into that and how it's nice to know HTML and CSS and all of the other people read differently on the internet, what your website's actually supposed to do for you, that sort of thing. So I like to take that kind of area and sort of walk people through it, because I've seen a lot of development and design agencies, the projects get completely stalled out just because of content, because inevitably someone will be like, oh yeah, this person will take care of content, and then it gets pushed to the back of the pile. Deadlines start approaching, and then they realize that it's not as easy as just, pulling up a Word document and throwing it together at the last minute.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit. Why is content on people's websites so important?
I think at one point it was more of like a billboard. So when you had a website, you just sort of threw up all of your info and phone number for people to call you, and that was kind of it. And now it's more of like an interaction. People are looking not only for the information about your website, but also trying to get a feel for, your brand and reviews. And now people have Instagram accounts and, Twitter support on all of this stuff. And so I think what you can start doing if you work on that content is making the website actually work for you. So not just throwing it up there and having people give you a call, but, making it a place where you can front load that work onto the website and instead of having to redo it over and over and over.
Got it. Yeah. And you mentioned that a lot of companies just don't understand the value of web content. I mean, there's things like search engine optimization. If you don't have great content that's continually updated and useful for people, then it's going to have a lot less of a chance to draw your ideal customers in. And so a lot of thought should be put into what kind of words are on your website. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of companies needing this. And there's always going to be work for quality writers, because you said that just because people can physically write doesn't mean that they can write well or write for the purpose that content can serve on a website. And so SEO writing for websites is a niche in the work at home world that is just blowing up. If you can learn how to write well for websites, then there's always going to be work for you. And same with web design. And people are finally catching on that a website is more than just a billboard. It's a business card. It's a trust building tool that draws people in for their company. And I know I've gone to websites that don't work properly, or they look shady, or they look like something that a teenager built in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. And I just click right off of it. And I'm turned off by that, because it's like, oh, these people aren't smart enough to know that a website is a good thing for their business. It just goes so far for people. So Owen, I'm curious, how did you get into this niche? How did you get into working at home doing this?
Well, I really enjoyed working with web content just because it's kind of its own little thing. So I was actually working for Utah State University as the IT department's technical writer. So I was writing help articles and, taking care of that stuff. And our quote unquote website was a homegrown CMS the university had created a long, long time ago. And they'd sort of put up some content that was just sort of copy pasted that really didn't help anybody do anything. So I asked him if I could go on there and make updates to that and actually, put some info on it. And they're like, oh, you can do that? It's like, yep, that would be one of the other things that technical writers could do. And honestly, I think tech writers have a really, really good kind of edge when it comes to this, because we're used to putting that down into a manual, to show people how to do it, or, to make it very easily digestible. So it worked out really, really nicely. And then inevitably, the more work I did doing web content, the closer and closer I got to web development, until I was actually doing web development. And so now it's kind of like a fun mix between, I know so much about the CMS and the backend and coding and all of that, that I have a really, really good idea of what you can do there and how much of that is actually really on the content managers when you're building a site, because you can't just develop a fix for bad content. Like, you have to have that good content. So I find that really, really interesting. And then just the fact that so many people were kind of missing that area and that expertise. So I've trained for the city of Colorado Springs, I've trained over 80 people to use their new CMS when they were switching over to that. And then on top of that, also trying to teach them to write for the web and, some of those other things. And I don't know, it's just kind of a fun little place to be in, I think.
Yeah. And in your application, you mentioned that this is kind of a newer job and that you really like it, but doing some freelance stuff on the side, you said, is more satisfying because you're able to give them all the answers they've been looking for sometimes months. You're able to solve that problem. And on the show and the Work at Home Heroes group and in my new book, where we talk a lot about, hey, if you want to make money, you just got to solve problems. And you've really, from what it sounds like, have latched on to that idea. You're like, I see this problem with these companies not understanding the value of web content. I see this problem with them not, being able to manage their own websites, and you're stepping in and you're bridging that gap for them and you're solving that problem. How much are you generating each month from home right now?
A little over $1,000 a month.
That's awesome. And so on top of your day job income, let me ask you, do you have intentions of going completely full-time with your work at home work, or are you liking the side hustle thing?
I would much rather do the whole work from home full-time thing. That's kind of a goal right now, is to try and get to that point.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're taking the action that you need to get there, and you've got a good head on your shoulders. And more than that, you've got the things that you need inside that head on your shoulders to make the right decisions to get there. And it's really only a matter of time. You've been doing this for about 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've really been starting to push this as my side gig for about 6 months now.
Cool. And it was through the Work at Home Summit that you're like, yeah, this should be the year that I start working from home, because of our messaging is like, this is the year. We did this in January, the summit, and our messaging was all about making this the year you want to do. And so was that true for you? Did you feel like the summit pushed you to do that?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I just started kind of a new job and I wasn't feeling as satisfied as I thought I would about it. And then I think I was listening to another podcast. Ed Gandia led me to another one, which led me to the summit that you were doing. I joined the Facebook group and I saw some of that messaging and I was like, you really can just make that decision and start working towards that, can't you? And so that's what I've been looking at.
That's awesome. And that it really is just a choice. And I probably use that phrase, it's a choice, like a million times in my new book that I'm currently editing, and it's going to hit bookstores in April 2019. And I've said it on my podcast now, so now it actually has to happen. But it absolutely is a choice. And people just don't realize that because we're not taught that in school. We're not taught that, hey, if you can dream it, you can do it. Nothing's impossible if you set your mind to it, blah, blah. But it's repeated so many times, and we're not given necessarily the tools and especially the mindset tools that we need to realize, hey, my actions actually can make a difference. Even the little ones made consistently over time can add up to big results. There's probably many people listening to the show right now that are in your shoes that are like, wait a second. So Owen just decided to do this, and then he took actions and made it happen. Maybe I can do the same thing. And that's why this show exists, and that's why we have Work at Home Heroes like you on the show. So anybody listening right now, they're like, I'd like to be on the show, but I don't know if I could do it. Like, yes, you can. We make it very easy. So if you're listening right now and you'd like to be a guest, be sure to reach out to Talia in the Work at Home Heroes group, or reach out to me personally. Let me know why you think you'd be a good fit for the show. So what was it like confidence-wise? Like, you had that messaging within the Work at Home Heroes group that you're like, why can't I just do this? What kind of mental and emotional challenges maybe got in the way for you when you were first getting started?
Basically, the way I saw it was middle of nowhere. I had no idea where to like even start. I had no idea, like, as a website developer and a content writer, I had no idea what I needed to have on my website, that sort of thing. I just knew it was something that I wanted to do. And so I started calling people and emailing people, specifically design and development agencies, people who had seen this exact problem over and over and over, more than likely. And so that's kind of where I started. And I didn't feel very confident about it at all. I sent an email to a local development agency and was like, hey, I'm working on web content. Basically, I don't remember even what I said there, but they immediately got back to me and they were like, oh, we have a client whose website has been stalled since September. And it was, I think at that point, it was like March or April or something. So it had been months. And they're like, when can you start? You know? And that right there was like, okay, I found somebody who has that exact problem. And this is exactly where, you know, and we got the website up in about 4 months, got the content written. Now he's got his brand new website up that sat for months and months.
Wow. So there are problems everywhere, you guys. I'm hoping that you're getting that. And what niche was that client's website in, by the way?
He was actually an excavator. So concrete and all of that other fun stuff.
Y'all, if there is work to be done and money to be made from home in concrete excavation, there are opportunities for you. I want you to hear me right now. There are opportunities and there are problems to be solved, to be paid for everywhere. This is so, so cool. I love, the more obscure the niche, the more excited I get, because especially if I've never heard of it. And a lot of people come to me at Proofread Anywhere and they say, I've never heard of this. I didn't know you could get paid to read. Well, you don't just get paid to read. You get paid to polish the reading by finding the typos, but I get where they're coming from with that. There's like, I just didn't know that I could use this skill. And so many times, like, things are just staring us in the face. There's people out there that might work in concrete excavation and have no idea that they could learn a skill to help out their industry with their knowledge in the industry, with just a few tweaks and just a few ways of reprogramming their mind, adding new skills. Crazy things happen when you add new skills and you put new information to your brain, take action on it. Learning changes everything, is what I've said from the very beginning. Once I realized, hey, I learned how to do a website and now I'm making money with my blog. Prior to that, I told myself I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to start a website. And then forever, I don't know how, stop me from making changes in my life. I just had no idea that I could make the choice to learn something new and take new actions. And now it has absolutely changed my life. It's changed the life of many work home viewers. It's changed your life. And so I just love hearing there's money in the niche too. I just dig it. So how has your life improved since you've added on this side hustle? Like, what kind of mental, physical, maybe health improvements have you seen outside of, making extra room in your budget?
Oh man, there's nothing better than getting a new client and being able to tell them that you can fix the exact problem that they have.
Oh yeah.
Getting to that point is a little difficult, but no greater feeling than that, just because you're not just showing up and being like, all right, I'm here for 8 hours. What do you want me to do while I'm here? So that part is probably the most satisfying part of doing the side gig, but it is also very nice to put some money aside that's, outside of the regular budget and kind of frees us up from some of the other stuff. And it's all just from doing a little bit of hustling nights and weekends. And I'd say it's pretty worth it.
Yeah. Plus you have twins, right, at home, and you recently were diagnosed with celiac disease.
Yeah. So lots of fun stuff. I also got glasses this last year too. So there's all sorts of changes, but
the fun of getting older, right?
I know, right?
A lot of our heroes at home were like, oh yeah, we're not along right with you, Owen.
I'm kind of wondering if, because my twins are 2 years old, I'm kind of wondering if having kids is what tipped off the eyesight worsening or whatever. But, a year of not sleeping very well probably did it.
Oh my gosh, it definitely couldn't have helped. But I'm sure it's worth it. And yeah, this extra income, it's giving you some breathing room, and it's life-changing money is the way I describe it. So many people come to me every day and they say, I just want to make an extra $500 a month. So that's half of what you're generating on the side right now, an extra 1,000, an extra 1,500, things like that. Small amounts that would add up to a lot. $1,000 a month is an extra $12,000 a year. Do you know how long it would take in an average job to get like $12,000 extra a year in a raise? That's a huge raise. Most people are getting like 1%, 2% merit increases, cost of living increases. Cost of living is going up, you're getting a raise, but you're not actually making any more money. So you've taken matters in own hands, easily added on this extra $1,000 a month, doing just a little bit of work on the side. And it is life-changing money. And there's no reason that you can't just snowball that into a full-time income a lot faster than you think. I mean, this is already within the last 6 months become something that's life-changing for you. So if you're listening at home, I hope that you're getting inspired by what you could do in your spare time in addition to having 2-year-old twins at home, celiac disease, and a full-time job. So this is super, super impressive, and I'm so glad that you're on the show. What was it like when you're adding on the side income, like with your family and friends? Were people like, oh, making money on the internet's a scam? Or did you get any negative or unsolicited advice or feedback from people in your sphere of influence?
I have had a couple of not so great responses from my wife, just because nobody wants to hear like, oh, I'm home now, but is it cool if I go spend 3 or 4 hours working on this side project, sort of a thing. And so that's been a little bit difficult. That took some figuring out and altering, how I would do things. Now I wait until, kids are in bed and everything else is pretty well quiet down to do this work, or I wake up, nice and early. But not too many negative outlooks on it. Actually, I've had a couple of people who are like, that's kind of something that I've been thinking about, or, that would be great if I could figure out how to work from home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of get into a little groove. It sounds like you guys are working that out at home too with the kids, and not coming home immediately and going into your office and working on your side project, but waiting until the kids are in bed. I think that's really, really good that you guys are working that out. And I think everybody kind of has to find their own groove in that way and keeping themselves on track. During the day with work and stuff, how do you keep yourself on track? How do you keep yourself from burning out as well? Because a lot of people probably have the fear that if they add on more to what they're already doing, that it'll just overwhelm them. How do you maybe avoid that, but still keep yourself on track?
Oh, every once in a while I do get completely overwhelmed, and then I go fishing or whatever it is that I need to do.
Stress relief. That's good.
Yeah.
It's a good strategy, you guys. It is.
It's, I mean, some of it's not even like the direct work that causes that stress. A lot of it's like, I have to put together an invoice and send it to my client. And we agreed that it would be so much per hour or whatever. And I put in this many hours. And so, I'm going to send them this invoice, but am I charging too much? Am I ever going to hear from them again? Like a lot of that stuff, when it gets too much, I always just sort of, set it down, walk away. I kind of have this is going to be weird, but I read Delta Force by Eric Haney like years and years ago. And at one point in the book, he was explaining, why he was a good candidate for this project. And he explained himself as having a self-cleaning psyche, which I kind of imagine as every morning you wake up and you're kind of able to continue going on with whatever it was, regardless of what happened the day before or how stressed out that sort of thing is. So I kind of have an easier time dealing with that sort of stress and trying to stay away from burnout, I feel like. But in the same sense, I'm not overexerting myself far beyond my means. And if I am getting too much work, I start charging more and more and more so that, it's worth it in one way. But also, if I get enough money for that project, then I can take a break and don't have to keep going so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you've really found that balance. So that's awesome. So what's next for you, Owen? Do you have measures in place to make sure that your business is going to continue to grow? I know your dream is to make this a full-time thing. So maybe in the next year or two, what's next?
I have a tentative plan for kind of doing my own agency / freelance work where the focus is on the content. So a lot of agencies right now are like, well, we can build you a site and we might have somebody to help with content, that sort of thing. And so my approach, I'd like it to be like, I can write your content, we can work on your SEO, we can actually make your website work for you. And then if you also need it, we can do web development, because I feel like a lot of people try and fix their content problems with more development, and development's expensive and so is content. But I don't think a lot of people understand the content writing and editing and managing it on a CMS is also expensive and time consuming. So that's the dream, is to, be able to have content agency like that and, get to work with some nifty clients and get to do that instead.
Nifty client. I'm a nifty client of several web development agencies over the last few years, and I can definitely say that the content is the hardest part, because I mean, that's what holds up the project. Is they're like, we need content for all these pages we're designing for you. And so it's like, what do you put on these pages? And so you can get a website design, but then there's all this dummy text that you have to go in and fill in. And that's actually the way I prefer to work, is just build me the website, with a layout that's designed to convert or whatever. And then I'll fill in the text afterwards, like on a staging site. I need to see the website so I know what text should go where, and not just like imagine it in my head. I need to see it. But that's definitely the hardest part. Well, final question, Owen. We're running out of time here, and I want to make sure we get the final question, which is always the same question I ask every guest, because there's always somebody that's like, well, maybe Owen can do this, even though he has 2 kids, and even though, he's got a full-time job and he's got these web development skills. Like, we're making all these excuses for why we can't do it, even though we have all these heroes on the show who can, and who started from scratch as well, many of them. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to work at home, but is just scared to get started?
I personally love online courses. I think that is a fantastic way to learn new things. I have a degree, but I'm fairly certain that the job and the side gig that I have right now come more from me learning from lynda.com and, those other online coursework websites. Just getting some of that training in, and even knowing just the lingo of, that area that you want to work in is a game changer. People will think you have superpowers if you can learn that on your own. Yeah.
And the reality is, it's skills. And if you have skills to solve a problem for someone, they will pay you.
Exactly.
If you can save them time, they'll pay you. And you're doing just that. And I was just writing or editing this part in my book about this exact concept, the concept of it's an equation. Success is just math. Success equals skills and action. If you increase the skills, it's not skills plus action, it's skills times action. It's a multiplication problem, because you have to have something in both of those variables for there to be any result. So if you have 0 and you multiply it by 0 action, you're going to get 0. If you have 0 skills and multiply it by a lot of action, you're going to get 0 result. Even if you have 1 in the skills department and you multiply it by 1, you're still going to get a 1. And as you increase those variables, skills and action, you're going to increase your success. It's really just a math problem. And if you look at it logically like that, and you're like, well, I want to make more money. And then you ask yourself, what are you doing? And if you're not doing anything differently to make more money, then you're not going to get any results. If you have a lot of skills, but you're not taking action on those skills, you're not going to get any result. If you're taking a lot of action, but your skills really need some work, then you're not going to get results as well. So the best thing you can do is manipulate those 2 variables in that equation as best as you can. So any of those math nerds, this is really the only math that I'm good at. I'm not a math nerd at all. I'm definitely a words person, but I get that equation. If you're not a math person, don't worry. If you can get the success equals skills times action equation, and you keep that front of mind and you just manipulate those variables, you will be successful. It's really quite simple. Owen, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. You're in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group, where we've tagged you in there. So if you're listening to this episode and you want to speak to Owen, you can go and find the thread in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group and ask him any questions you want. For those of us who are maybe not on Facebook, where can people reach you if they want to maybe ask you a question about this interview, Owen?
OwenMorrill.com is where I'm putting my portfolio all together. And then also on Twitter at Owen Morrill.
Excellent. And we have the show notes at workathomeschool.com/podcast. So if you want more information on this episode, we've got show notes and links to Owen's website as well. Thanks for being on the show, Owen.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for listening, guys. I'd like to invite you to be a part of our Facebook community if you're not a member already. That group is called Work at Home Heroes. There's going to be a link in the show notes to find the group. We'll open up a discussion about this episode, so I hope to see you in there. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.